This is Imran. This Pakistani Life is a project I've been thinking about for a long time, and today I bring you its first episode. This Pakistani Life will bring you fascinating life stories of ordinary Pakistanis and celebrate the successes of extraordinary Pakistanis. Stories that have never been told before. This Pakistani Life will cover topics on business, innovation, entrepreneurship, economics, technology, and society. My guest today is Osama Hashmi. Osama lives in Seattle, USA. He is a board member at Mocha 7, a product innovation and strategy firm. He advises businesses on 10x innovation, something that we will talk about today. Osama is the author of a book, Innovation Thinking Methods, available on Amazon and has been very well received. You must get a copy. Osama was also the founding member, or rather the founder of Green and White, the first online entrepreneurial community in Pakistan. Osama was visiting Pakistan earlier in the year when we recorded this program. Let's watch. So tell us about your book. What is that all about?
My professional work is a lot of clients will come to us and say, how do we invent the next big thing, right? So usually, a lot of times when you're trying to build a better product or the next product or solution, so you have to figure out a way of approaching the problem, right? So what we've seen is a lot of times the products that come out, they're very similar to existing products. They're sort of derivative. So you look around, you say, if this is working, let's make something similar to that. Whereas the challenge that clients give us is how do we think about something that no one has thought of before. So it took us a while to figure out to do that. You don't have to be a genius. There are things you can learn, some methodologies and techniques, through which you can actually reliably come up with these disruptive, generational leaping products. So the book came out of that research, the techniques that we use internally. So I've just put them together in a book so it can help other startup companies building products or building solutions of any sort, really.
So one of the things that we were talking about yesterday is this whole idea of exponential innovation.
Yeah.
So why is that relevant now more than ever?
Exponential innovation is necessary just to create ideas which are exponentially better, 10 times better in terms of results than before. If you think about the horses to cars transition, if you think about dot matrix printers, say, and then you had laser printers. If you thought about old phones, landline phones, and then you had mobile phones. So the impact in terms of access and mobility was huge, right? The Ustarangi transition is usually what I call exponential innovation, and there's different ways of doing it. Why is it important now is because, particularly right now, because of a lot of the technologies that we've seen, there are some really large-scale global impact problems and challenges that are coming up, and they're just around the corner, in a few years. And I think, I'm really getting passionate about these social impact problems because someone has to solve them, and these problems are bigger than any one particular country or one particular ecosystem. So we all have to come together, and we all have to figure out the new rules and the new approaches to take to actually solve these problems. One of them is we have to start thinking exponentially in terms of results. There's a saying just outside here. You can't solve the problems of today with the solutions of yesterday, right? So this is more important now than ever because the problems we're facing have never existed before. These are unprecedented problems. None of our past solutions are going to work. So we need the thinking methodologies, we need the techniques to actually come up with brilliant, brand new ideas from all ecosystems around the world.
Right, so for example, one of the things that you were thinking about is, and I guess West is very concerned about that, is this whole notion of about 40% or maybe even more people not even having a job, and you talked about the truck drivers, and I'd like to run through the numbers, and because all of that is going to get automated, and maybe it will not hit Pakistan in the near future, but eventually it will fairly soon once it starts to happen. So
it's crazy. 40% of the world's population over the next 4 years could lose their job and income, and most of them are not. They don't have the skills to go to next. The nearest case is the truck drivers and the farmers. Farming, there's robotics, automation. There's self-driving robot tractors now that are being deployed everywhere. And initially, the farm owner can be useful, like in a lot of the field workers and farm hands can not so much. But Tesla, for example, announced a semi-autonomous sort of vehicle. They have the capability of full self-driving, right? And other sort of competitors will also come up with self-driving commercial trucks, right? So you have areas like Sacramento, California is right now doing commercial self-driving trials that could expand to all of California and other states. And as soon as that becomes legalized, so in the U.S. alone, 3 to 4 million truck drivers could lose their job in the next. I mean, the economic incentive is so huge that they could just easily lose their job in the next, like few years, right? And around the world is 110 million truck drivers. So what do we do with them? So there's a few approaches to that. Again, one approach is, okay, let's train them on skills, like high-end skills. Okay, well, they could do WordPress development, they could become freelancers, make some income. But the problem is AI is so substantially disruptive, even freelancer jobs are going away.
Really?
And this is something that people don't realize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I've seen like a software house which is doing, I don't know, I think 200 client projects at the same time. They don't have any designers, engineers. It's all done by AI. The project manager is AI, which assigns development tasks to AI templates, which sort of build a thing in 3 weeks and then ship it to the customer. So
is that really happening?
it's happening. There's a studio right now, and same thing is actually happening. This is the most shocking discovery for me. Was same thing is happening in startup incubators. There's an incubator which is there's multiple incubators now that are looking at AI-based development sort of approaches to say why even invest in entrepreneurs? We'll just come up with ideas and go from idea to market in 2.5 weeks using AI-based development and just launch products. so when we talk about, usually when we talk about jobs going away, you think about the low-end jobs. But these are high-end knowledge-based jobs that are being templatized, and the deep learning AI algorithms are getting good enough. You saw these examples. Extrapolating a few years from now, the big issue is the freelancer market could go away. The project management market could go away. So then what happens?
It's essentially the idea that everybody would get like a paycheck. It's like Social Security in the US, for example, right? So, but do you think that really is the solution, to the problem?
The idea was the robots are doing humans' work, right? So you could tax the robots and then use the tax to pay the people, right? But okay. Sweden has looked at this. There's been even trials, I think, in Oakland, California, and as far as I've seen, it's not a very, that the solution may not be that, right? It might be that, but it's too uncertain right now. Mm-hmm. My question is, do we really want to bank on one solution? We should be exploring 100 solutions to this problem, right?
Right.
And that requires like substantial thinking out of the box to see what else can be done, right? So in terms of answering your question on what type of jobs are at least right now in demand, is the high-end sort of design thinking, innovation, ideation, product creation type of jobs, right? Those, because you need some human to imagine something, and then the building of the thing could be automated. Mm-hmm. The other aspect is a lot of software can be automated, but a lot of hardware may not be. Ergonomics may not be currently. Like it's maybe like using genetic algorithms and other things that'll catch up eventually. There's huge issues happening that nobody seems to be talking about. Uh-huh. Okay, like if you look at the startup ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, really like it's funny because all we end up we're making e-commerce apps, we're making food delivery apps, we're making travel websites, we're making things which are fueling the consumerist capitalist economy. Okay. And in the meantime, the real problems are being left alone by the government, the civic infrastructure. Nobody's tackling them. I'll give you a few examples. One is homelessness, because of in Seattle has about 20,000 homeless, Sacramento has about 4,000 homeless, Bay Area has more, but these cities are crumbling under homelessness because the civic infrastructure just cannot handle that. When you have 4 million truck drivers added to that system, these systems are going to collapse, right? So we need to tackle that as well. Get a reliable methodology figured out to get homeless off the streets. So think of homelessness not as a condition you have, but a sort of incubator program you're going through. You're like, okay, I'm currently this, and I'll get out because there's a reliable system in place, right?
To me, what you're describing is almost changing the social order of the society, right? So isn't there a bigger dimension than just a bunch of people trying a new idea?
Before I answer that question, let me give you a few other examples. Mm-hmm. because part of the reason we're in this situation is because of technology changing social cultures. Facebook social networks were designed to bring us closer, but the opposite has happened. We're more isolated now.
Looking at screen all the time, for example.
Yeah, and I think the quality of social relationships used to mean something, right? They had depth, and now it's just a like button and you're done, right? That's your shallowness of nobody has time for each other. For example, families are torn apart now more than ever before. Social media has amplified this idea of silos. No matter which side you're on, you've got to have a side on every issue now, which is becoming a big political issue.
It might have a bearing on the way the US presidential election played out and Trump got
and Brexit in Europe. These are like, this is where the new war is. If you control public influence, like they literally had automated like 100,000, 200,000 Twitter accounts tweeting, propaganda essentially, which sort of swayed a lot of public opinion. So this is a very potent tool now that needs to be fixed.
Do you think this might happen in next Pakistani election? Because, less than a year away. You think it will have some bearing? Maybe the political parties need to start thinking about
don't give them ideas.
Robots, which will post these messages or something.
Don't give them ideas, then come on.
एक तो चीज़ जैसे आप कह रहे थे कि जो कि आपने बड़े अच्छे तरीके से उसको पोर्ट्रे किया था कि ये जो आप बाहर निकले, कल आप और मैं जब बाहर जा रहे थे तो आपने कहा ये स्मॉग है, और एक आपने वो कहा कि कुछ इस लोगों ने तहकीक की है कि ये स्मॉग जो है इसी तरह है जैसे आपने 16 सिगरेट, अगर आप इस माहौल में रहते हैं तो आप इसी तरह जैसे आपने 43 सिगरेट्स। तो मैं बहुत से लोगों को तवज्जो दिलाना चाहूँगा कि अगर आप स्मोकिंग नहीं करते तो ये नहीं समझिए कि आप बच गए हैं।
It's crazy. The air quality index on the past 2 years, Lahore, Islamabad has gotten this smog which hurts your throat, right?
Right.
And they say, oh, it's nothing. It's just some burning. It'll fix it. But the air quality index is such that you're smoking 43 cigarettes a day while that's happening, right?
Yeah, 43 cigarettes. Yeah, wow.
So, this is what I've been going around the country talking about, is that right now we can solve the smog problem if we ignore it. So in 2 years from now, what happens when 20% of our population starts to develop lung cancer or something worse? So then we're going to have to solve that problem. If we're always in a reactionary mode, so that is a much more difficult problem to solve.
Right.
Our medical systems and our hospitals aren't ready for that. Right? So might as well channelize innovation thinking and getting, the solution has to come out of R&D and innovators. It has to, because even if you get the public policy people to say we're ready to go, what do? The ideas have to come out from the intellectual class, right?
Sure.
So that's why we can channelize our attention to these types of problems. Smog is a problem in Pakistan, but Pakistan, and I mean this in the best of ways, we have the opportunity as intellectuals and innovators to do some social engineering to bring a lot of our society back towards the things we complain about. Like in our homes we'll say, oh, man, morality is going away. People are, engaging in israf. Their consumerist culture is developed in Pakistan. This didn't happen multiple years ago. So then we have a choice. We either say, I'll complain about it, but it's someone else's problem, or we'll say, well, it's the problem of the scholarship of Islam, for example, who should teach good values, or we say it's the government's problem. And the fourth option is, let's do something about it, we'll jump in and help, right? And I think, again, within the tech community, we have an opportunity to do some of these things, or at least explore some of these things. It's an interesting intellectual question, right? Like, can a technology solution create more empathy or create, so
far it seems like it's the other way around, like the example that you gave for Facebook, but you believe that there's an opportunity to actually
so at least
do it the other way.
There are some countries who are trying, like Estonia, for example, a small country in Europe, 22,000 people, that's their population, but they actually they're doing a cryptocurrency initial coin offering, ICO, to generate government supported Esto coins, and they're saying whoever does good things in society will give them coins, and against the coins you can get tax breaks. Okay. This is a solution to incentivize ihsan, right? So China's, whether or not you agree with this, because it's a little bit, but China is trying something with, you have an app and you have points on it, and they have a way of determining if you've been a good citizen or not. You've been helping other people and this and that. So if you do ihsan, you go out of your way for somebody, you actually get points, and you can redeem the points for government incentives. So there are things that can be done. Because social engineering is just about economic incentives at the end of the day.
Right.
It's about, like if someone does a good thing and he knows. I gave an example in a talk. Imagine the justice system in the US, right? The big problem with the justice system in the US is, let's say you did a crime, you incarcerated, you serve your time, now you're back. You're theoretically a free person, you should have the opportunity of rebuilding your life. What happens is that one bad thing you did will just haunt you for the rest of your life. Nobody will hire you, nobody will do anything. Because we're only measuring on your record the bad stuff you do. We don't have a reliable, fair way of measuring the good stuff you do.
Right.
So technology can solve that. If this person who comes out of jail says, okay, yeah, there's a fair system. Okay, if I choose today to do 1,000 good deeds now, that one bad deed will go away, or my record will have a better sort of picture of who I am, right? So I can actually have hope for coming out of the situation. I believe a lot of these can be for-profit solutions,
Right.
which don't exploit people, but they're also fair to everybody, and they sort of create this social change.
So one thing I'd be interested in knowing that you're going around National Incubation Center. You be there, it's going to be set up in multiple cities. There's Nest.io in Karachi. There's Plan 9 in Lahore, which in some ways set the trend a few years back. तो आपको क्या नजर आता है?
Firstly, what's great to see is the amount of energy and motivation that is in the Pakistani ecosystem. It's amazing how many things, how many people are doing to try to move Pakistan to the next level.
Are you saying that to make us feel good, or you really believe?
You would remember you and I and multiple other people 10 years ago were trying to really hard to kickstart this entrepreneurship sort of ecosystem, and I know that whatever sort of small role I played in that, now it's alhamdulillah, it's great to see the volume of activity.
And for our audience, you were in Pakistan at that time.
I was in Pakistan at the time, yeah. So, but it's great to see the volume of activity happening in these national incubators that are, for example, government funded, like really nice facilities.
A great public-private partnership, by the way.
Okay, yeah. So now comes the challenge, right? The challenge is, and this is a global challenge.
Right.
I've been involved in looking at incubators in multiple countries, from South Korea to France and Ecuador and so on. In Sacramento, I've been an advisor mentor to an accelerator there. Over the past 2 years, and by the way, as part of our company, we also work with angel investors, VCs, frequently because we advise their companies, right, the ones they invest in. So in all of this conversation, there's been a shift, which is the lean startup methodology, and anybody who accelerated companies through that, and anybody who invested in that, they're not seeing anything come out of it, right? The investors are just, I've had multiple people indicate that they're not really interested in investing in lean startup companies anymore. They're just literally stopping because their old companies aren't getting
alternative. Yes.
I'll get to that in a second. But accelerators, the conversation now is all of the people coming through our programs are non-fundable for many reasons. Like the company just isn't interesting enough, right? There's a reason. Part of the reason is you have to consider we're living in a world of attention economics. There's way too many products being launched each day, right? So think about, you're a TechCrunch reporter. You have to cover 2 startups a day at max. There's 46 launching each day, right? So you're not gonna, you're only gonna cover the stuff that stands out, that grabs your attention. And our company, Mocha 7, has 2 divisions. The marketing and PR side has frequently worked with the top journalists at TechCrunch, New York Times, and so on. So while the feedback is the same, we're not interested in covering these Me Too sort of e-commerce, travel, whatever apps. What are they interested in covering is moonshots, right? Stuff which feels like the future, like robotics and like space and things that are happening where venture builders fit in, right? So one of them is this, that just in the incubators themselves, you just change the curriculum to like focus everybody on more substantial things. And what I found real quick is it doesn't take more money or less money or more time or less time. With the same time and money, you can just build better stuff based on a better curriculum.
Okay.
The second thing that's happening is a lot of incubators are realizing that mentors have a place in the system, but the other way is to directly go and hire consultants. And so that's where venture builders are coming in. So venture builder is this hybrid of a VC firm or angel investment or an entity which has the funds to give and also take a more significant stake as an investor or a co-founder in a company. And so, like you're saying, you take some of the promising folks, and you say, okay, you know what, we're going to bring them in, and then we'll actually have the money applied towards expert consultants coming in to actually solve meaningful problems. Because when the consultant is paid, they have an incentive to look at a specific thing, whereas a mentor may or may not, depending on how much free time they have.
Okay. And how would these consultants be compensated for? Or is that equity? Is that
no, it's venture builders would have the investment that goes into the startup, which would be a slightly more significant investment because it's stage 2, right? This company has gone up for an incubator program.
Okay.
So now they're like, okay, let's come in. The venture builder takes a stronger equity stake, and then, this is what's happening. You don't have to do it this way, but then you invest a significant portion, and then a portion of that goes to the consultants. So like our company's worked with VCs in that model. Like in our VCs, I've seen 3 in Seattle, where the VC firm pretty much converts into a venture builder. And they say, we'll just work more closely and more hands-on, but not in the old sort of evil VC way, where they would be hands-on, but not really hands-on. This is like working as a co-founder and really like getting vested in the interest of like growing this company. So sometimes, for example, I've seen like 4 different variations of the venture build model. Like in one that I saw, for example, says the program is going to be 3 years long. So we'll commit to funding you for 3 years, provided we work together on going through 2 iterations of the product, using like our in-house team and consultants and like very specialized sort of focus to making it work.
You use physical space here.
Yeah.
Just having a place. Do you think there's a correlation between having a particular kind of space, for example, this, and innovation and the ideas that will come out?
Comes from like the mind, right? The intellectual, right? Here's a formula, you apply your mind and you come up with answers. Like when you have to face gigantic problems, it will take more than that. So one of the places that my research has ended up is actually Islamic history, which is very interesting for 2 reasons. One is a lot of Islamic education in terms of how we nurture our skills, like whether it's design, engineering, business, whatever, came not just from the mind, but also from the spiritual heart.
Okay.
And what's interesting is using the heart as a tool for creating a language and a framework for how to solve problems is very powerful. Like we already know this. Just to give you some examples, like the spiritual heart the mind has ideas, but the heart has empathy, right? And we already know, empathy has been a big driving force for design thinking, and design thinking is a big way of solving big challenges. So this is what I mean, like there's a new language framework, design thinking, which is evolved from something which our heart can do. We feel for the other people, and the more empathy we can have, the better the solutions, for example. Another thing our heart has, which is purpose. And we also have a lot of research on that. The more a person, like if you get good managers know this, right? The difference between an average performer and a super high class performer is 2 things. One is intellectual curiosity. Right? If he gets curious about something, he'll go, right? The other is this belief that we're standing for something bigger than ourselves, which comes from the heart, purpose, missions. And so a lot of the framework of what we find in Islam is this idea, all of our, I haven't done too much research on this, but I'm sure if you go into those ancient texts, what you'll find is frameworks of business, frameworks of architecture, design, whatever, which optimize heart-oriented strengths and mind-oriented strengths towards a framework for how you solve these problems. The other aspect was, going, alhamdulillah, and looking at very fascinating, looking at the architecture of Islamic masjids, right? In different civilizations.
Wazir Khan Mosque,
Wazir Khan Mosque was amazing. Cordoba and Istanbul may have the Ottoman Empire and their masjids. The interesting piece is these are 3 different civilizations in different periods of time. They have the same core components inside of the masjids, which is not just the prayer space, but everyone seems to have like something the equivalent of a co-working space. Right, which is like offices, which are very
close. So this is at the periphery of the
compound. In Cordoba, the prayer space is right in the middle, and you have offices on the edges of the compound. Think of it as a co-working space from the time.
Right.
You have the artisans all coming together in one place, and then you have the prayer space in the middle, so you're all meeting all the time.
And it's like in the middle of a busy, business district also, right?
Yeah,
interesting opportunities.
exactly. And then all of these are surrounded by merchants, and that's also interesting because basically, like, let me unravel this. You have a central thing which is enabling these merchants to thrive because people are going to come to this thing all the time. But because the merchants are thriving because of this thing, you have a waqf which gets built. In other words, the revenue from the merchants goes back into maintaining the masjid, which is interesting because this is very similar to our incubator accelerator frameworks that we've evolved anyway. You have a co-working space which allows for serendipitous conversations, and then you have you take equity for all the startups so that when they succeed, it goes back to the accelerator to keep funding it. There's a lot of like parallels to that ancient sort of structure that they found on their own, and what we're finding by ourselves on the stuff that spurns creativity.
Right.
But one difference and one missing piece has been the courtyards. Like all of the masjids have courtyards.
Right.
I look at the ancient structure as these people went through the thought process on how do we nurture the people in society to become the best citizens of society that can solve society's challenges, which requires you to become innovative, creative, become that maximum version of yourself, right?
Right.
And for some reason, they figured out that these components are very necessary. You have to have a spiritual connection to prayer spaces, you have to have a co-working space, you have to have a merchants that are supporting it with a waqf, and then the fourth is the courtyard. So I don't know what the solution is for why the courtyard, but I think maybe it's important to have a chance to walk and reflect and think and have the chance to look up at the sky and think about
especially when people are coming together 5 times a day and
and that's the other thing, like a courtyard is a natural serendipitous sort of majlis, if you will, like in the ancient days, like in 500 600 years after Islam, the majlis was this idea of having the philosophers and the astrophysicists and the mathematicians all sit together every evening and talk about their latest inventions. And only through that, amazing collaborations happen, right? All of the stuff like algebra and the decimal system astronomy came through these things. Through serendipitously, someone getting up and saying, hey, I've invented this new way of doing this. And they're like, oh, I could use this for this. And so there's those larger than the collaborations which are bigger than the sum of the parts. They emerge from that.
Right.
Again, coming back to if we need to solve really ridiculously important problems, we need new ways of building new ways of approaching startups, exponential thinking, whatever. We need new ways of thinking about venture capital or accelerators as a venture builder. But then we need really to rethink what is the best formula for building a company which optimizes heart and mind. Whether you want to take it for sources from the Islamic tradition or not, you have to use heart, purpose, empathy, caring for others. A lot of these things that our heart is capable of, as part of our syllabus, if you will, right? Like design thinking is doing. And then the fourth is, really looking at all of these best ideas for how do we build the optimal spaces through which innovation and creativity can spread. I think all of these things coming together might create the type of solutions that can heal this world.
A couple of quick points. One is that obviously, the traditional way of venture capital and, it's very straightforward. I'll give you money, you exponentially scale a business, and, then we share the spoils, right? So it's a very financial, it's number-driven, IPO, mega successes, right? But now people have started to talk about, impact investing, right? I mean that word is being thrown out a lot. So, is that just a fashion? Is that just a fad, or there's something interesting going on in the world right now?
Impact investment is an interesting area because it's evolving. Many different sort of possibilities and options of what it is, right? In the simplest and most pressing sense, there's the idea that everything that any startup company does, even if it's not a social enterprise, should be a mission-driven company making profit. But the mission comes first, because we found that that's how the best companies emerge and the best companies succeed.
Right.
They're passionate about the mission they're trying to solve, right? Even if it's a regular mission. But the next stage is social innovation, which is for-profit, for-impact companies. You could be solving medical debt, or helping farmers or fisheries, or you could be helping a lot of these social impact problems, like in a for-profit way. Then you have impact investment that just comes which is sort of the evolution of CSR initiatives, where it's, companies are choosing to invest, or VCs are choosing to invest in certain areas because partly they don't necessarily care about huge returns, they care about moderate returns, but also impact. So there's this humanitarian sort of side to it, right? And the fourth is just, like even, I think in Muslim traditions or values, you have this idea of barakah, right, which is literally impact investing, right? So we know this direct correlation. The more you invest in impact, the more it comes back in your life in some way.
Right.
So there's also that motivating a lot of this stuff. But one thing that's become clear in terms of Silicon Valley investors are talking about it, everybody's sort of focused on, is that all startup companies, whether you are helping the poor or you're just making an e-commerce site, whatever it is, you have to orient yourself around a mission first, rather than around the money first. So mission-driven companies are the ones that are succeeding.
You take a leap of 25 years and see where you want to be, and then you backtrack and see what elements you need to put in place to make this happen. So if you take that approach for the Pakistani context,
Right.
how do you see that?
The approach you're talking about is called the future history approach, and in Singularity University they now have a course called science fiction based design thinking, which is very similar. Basically, you imagine the future maybe 70, 80 years from now, and you say, okay, the future is better because this one core problem is solved. The world really, but in conversations with VCs, is they are caring less and less that the companies are coming out of the US. They're trying to solve problems. Like if you look at investment funds, they have an investment thesis. They'll say, we will invest in anybody who's trying to solve these problems, right?
Right.
Or OpenIDEO has a really good OpenIDEO challenge. They'll say, we'll fund you if you can solve this problem, whether it's motivation at work or solving a trash problem or something. The recent challenges was like that. Or you have the X Prize, which is another model. So people are starting to care less and less where the ideas come from. Really, like, through out of like areas that you don't expect, you're seeing brilliant ideas emerge. But the idea's ambition and the quality has to be a certain level. So when we think ahead in Pakistan, like my sort of hope would be that we focus on that. We focus on exponentially increasing the ambition of the ideas. Because, like if we keep getting scared that it will take too much money or it'll be too risky or whatever, those are sort of problems you can optimize in other ways, right? But if you use those excuses to scale down the ambition, then again, in attention economics, nobody would care about those ideas. Like if you scale down the ambition, the risk of obscurity increases. So if you think about if you reduce the risk of investment, let's invest in safe ideas, then no one covers it, so the risk of obscurity is high. Whereas if you increase your risk of investment and really back crazy things, then the risk of obscurity is really low. So that actually could work, right? And this is what I'm seeing.
Right.
So in the Pakistani context, I really hope that we become part of that global ecosystem, because in my and I've traveled over multiple countries now, looking at startup ecosystems, and I've seen this immediate shift. People are just not doing the old stuff. They're saying, let's just do moonshots, big stuff, and that's all we want to do.
Another way people have tried to solve problems is to have challenges. We have, X Prize, for example. Do you see there is relevance to that in Pakistan context?
Absolutely, because there are things that are even bigger than startups, because the startups will keep trying to figure out a business model and blah blah blah, and the motivation just sort of takes longer to get to where you apply capital to the problem, right? Because you have to prove the problem over the course of 7 months and whatever. Challenges can, for example, smog, we talked about that. That's a perfect example for what we should do. Is we should set up a challenge saying, whoever can solve the smog problem, we're going to give them $1 million, right? And then just leave them, right? And you'll see that the academics and universities and the startups and everybody will be part of that question or conversation over the course of, this is what happened with the X Prize, right? And maybe 15 ideas will be tried out, and whichever is the best gets the $1 million. So it's like a big, gigantic contest as a challenge. I think the OpenIDEO approach could work really well for Pakistan.
Which is?
There is a very staged approach.
Okay.
It is in a way like an incubator. Like they say, here's a challenge, $40,000 or $100,000, whatever. But then they have a long program in which many different chapters from different cities will get together 30 innovators to come up with 10 ideas to pitch to the regional center. The regional will then approve a certain amount of them for the next stage. So eventually, that one idea is selected for that prize, right? So yeah, or like you said, I remember we talked about this. Even you could take the top 5 promising ideas and then do a staged investment
They
cycle
have
with
to
them.
meet certain goals, and then
Yeah.
before meet certain goals, they
You could say, okay, you're gonna, they
the
might
next
need
tranche of
500,000 to
funds
solve the full problem.
Right.
Let's give you 100,000 to solve the first part of the problem, and see how you're making progress, and then adjust and tweak. So that's a really good model that could apply for Pakistan. Yeah, and I think again the reason for these challenges is that it gives everybody purpose. That whole coming back to the heart, it gives them a direction to think about. Because if you just say, here's a brilliant incubation facility, come in and good luck, in a way, right? I mean, I know we help, but the idea, the responsibility for the idea is yours, then it doesn't help, right?
Right.
So I was having this conversation with somebody, I don't remember, last week, and I said, that's what we incubators need to think about, is that the responsibility of nurturing the heart is the incubators.
Right.
And that doesn't mean just giving them motivation. It means nurturing them towards purpose, giving them some direction that they get super passionate about. And then you can sort of see the best work come out of that, right?
Right.
So similarly, the challenges are sort of a national way of getting everybody around this one big question in a way that can really make a difference.
Well, fascinating conversation. I wish we had more time, but I guess we have to end it here. And again, thank you, Osama, for being here. And we'll see you on another edition of This Pakistani Life. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Exactly.
Our guest today was Osama Hashmi. Osama is the author of Innovation Thinking Methods, a book on product innovation and strategy. If you liked what you saw, send us a note, like us on Facebook, and follow us. And we will see you on a next episode of This Pakistani Life. Thank you.